Greetings. I am Tom Earl. Welcome to the celebration. We know you could be anywhere, so you joining us here today, it just means the world to us. You are loved, you are valued, and you are appreciated just as you are. Welcome back to episode 2 with Wally B. Jennings. How you doing, Wally?
I'm doing excellent, Tom. Thanks again for having me.
My pleasure. I keep trying to remember, so I forgot on the last one. I forget on most ones. We're recording this episode at the beginning of August 2023. This episode is going to come out sometime between now and the next 6 months. So if you're listening to this and you're like, why aren't y'all talking about this thing that happened? Because it's August. So that's the future. We didn't know it was going to happen. Okay, let's wave and we can go camera off. All right. So I have one question I wanted to follow up on from the last episode, and then I'll turn it over to you if there's anything you want to have us dive into or throw into the space. For the burial project, have you all built any coalition or had conversations with any Native American tribes?
That's a great question. We have not, but that actually is that's one of the next steps in the process. We are actually in the also too looking at potentially facilitating a larger presentation in the form of a conference or a symposium or something of that nature. But absolutely, we do want to begin to pull in Native Americans as far as with their experience and their voices in this particular process. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I like how that was what you've been up to. I love how conversations can just, that was my whole thing of this. Like, I just want to bring people together, and we can trust that we'll be led where the conversation should be going. And that felt like a confirmation to me. Like, I would have never known to ask that. So that was a wonderful first episode. What about you? Is there something you want us to talk about both together, or a question for me, or something you want to put into the space that we explore together? What for you is something that you want to have us explore?
Absolutely. I actually want to talk about fatherhood. And I want to
I was hoping.
Yep. I actually want to talk about fatherhood. I want to ask you how it was going for you.
Oh, I was just telling my mother-in-law, she's living with us, and I was like, oh my God, I just can't get enough of my daughter. Like it's definitely changed the trajectory of my life big time. My really big focus prior to Jayama was really my professional life, whether that's my art, my music, my ad agency. That was really my focus. And when I thought through my life, I was really shaping my life around giving myself the ability to focus on that. And then last year, I had achieved the level of success in my agency that I'd been kind of striving for 10 years. And I found that I no longer cared, that it was conflicting too much with my Jayama focus. And I really realized, like, all the things that I'm bringing to my business that are making it successful, intentionality, strategy, standard operating procedures, systems, creativity, that to really step up or rock it as a father, that I needed to take a huge chunk of that focus away from everything else and apply it to being a father. And I, before I had a child, was like, oh, it's going to take over my life, all these kind of things. And I didn't anticipate that I was going to voluntarily be like, I want to make this a priority, specifically because selfishly, I just really, really enjoy it. So it's it feels a lot like when I did sports, like hockey, and your coach would make you work out till you threw up 5 days a week, and then you'd have one game, and then you'd go right back to it, and sometimes you'd lose that game, Like it feels very similar to that, where it's just this like mission greater than me that a lot of times pushes me physically and emotionally way past my comfort level, and it definitely feels like that. Like I was built for doing hard things and being able to suffer through challenges in the moment for this kind of like greater mission. So it very much felt like, okay, I know how to wrap my mind around this. So that's kind of my initial how's it going?
And how old is she again?
3.5.
Man, yep. Yeah. So for me, just so you know, I'm on the other side, way on the other side of the extreme. So I have two daughters that have been immortalized in God Gave Me Girls, the poem.
Mm-hmm.
And so
One
written
of my
long,
favorites.
yeah, written long, long ago. My girls are now women and young women. My oldest is 20. She just finished her sophomore year in college, and she will be 21 in January. And my youngest is turning 16 next month. So man, and how you and I would how you always hear people say things like, the time goes by so fast, and you're like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I wish it would, because the season that I'm in right now, I can't wait for us to get past this. But that is so true, especially as I noticed that as my oldest, as they hit middle school, like those sixth grade to 12th grade years, they fly by because they're really beginning to exercise autonomy in their individuality. They're going to school, they're in extracurricular activities, they're hanging out with their friends on the weekend and going different places and doing this and doing that. There are certain days when she was in high school where I wouldn't, between me and work and the things that I had going on and her in school and some of the activities that she was involved in, I wouldn't see her for days. And now, as she's a college student, as far as my oldest, I will not hear from her for, a week or days at a time. And that has been that's been a major adjustment. And for you, Tom, yeah, I purposed as a father to always try to be there for, as far as to not miss things, not miss, recitals and dances and all those things. And I'm so glad that I committed to that. That was something that, as I thought about becoming a father, that I wanted to commit myself to being there for these formidable years of my children's life. And I'm so glad that I have been, to be able to spend time with them, because I tell you, as they grow into adults, they if you do it right, they go. Like, they literally like spread their wings, jump out of the nest, and they fly away. And my oldest is thriving. My youngest, who, for many of the listeners who may not know, she's on the autism spectrum. She's non-speaking. She has had some development challenges, but even as she turned 16, we really celebrate the growth that we've seen in her. Our hopes are and expectations for her are still high, but even she's operating in a level of independence where we've found a great organization and camp that she goes to once or twice every weekend. And during the summer, she goes for a week. And when I tell you, when she knows she's going, she will literally rush, pack her bag, run and jump in the car because she's excited about going. And so we are so excited that she has things that actually belong to her as an individual with special needs. It was that was one of my biggest concerns, that she would not have to have this kind of coattail mentality, that the only thing that she has is attached to things that me or my wife or even her big sister are into. And so it's so great for her to have things that really belong to her. So yeah, I tell you, Tom, from one father to another, enjoy it. Like, really, you got the right idea. I strongly encourage that. Yeah, they have to eat. Yeah, you need to clothe them. Yes, they need to have a roof over their head. But the most important thing is for you to be present and for you to be there. And I tell you, those things, they not only sit with you, but they're going to sit with her as well, and they're going to be important for her to have.
Yeah, this year, also a new thing in my life, and I'm starting to find I don't know what the word is. Um, I don't want to say the other side because I don't like that language around it, but a big companion this year has been depression for me, for sure.
Mm.
And I really had to become strategic in the managing of it because it was the first time where it was debilitating. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I think of like I've always heard the like how many spoons do you have analogy where you only have 5 spoons, if you will, and there are things in your day that are going to take a spoon. And I had to really be like, I only have this much energy, and to be there for my partner and for my daughter requires like 90% of what I have. And so I really had to kind of reshape my business and my hopes and my dreams and my aspirations around like, if you want to be present, then I really only have about an hour of really good working time a day. I'm privileged in that the work that I do, that is enough, but it was a lot of grieving what kind of imagined my life to look like professionally, of like letting that vision of myself go and reimagining what matters to me and anticipating that this is something that can happen again and it's appropriate. There's nothing dysfunctional about what I was going through. And that's kind of like we talked about in the last episode, is kind of trusting something bigger than yourself, that this suffering has a purpose. And I think a big part of it was seeing how I spent 10 years building a company that ultimately I became dissatisfied with, and seeing how within a month, if I'm not putting my foot down on the pedal, that it kind of all just fell apart and I had nothing to show for it, those 10 years of work. Comparing that against, so what if I had spent 30 years building this thing to the neglect of my family, and kind of like beyond, right? Because I do think that there are parents who, like my parents, for example, they had to work that much to give me the opportunity to have the privilege, to have the choice to say, this right here, this amount of work provides for my family. Past that is a little bit my ego, a little bit, and being like, I got to see the future of how striving for kind of external validation and maybe accolades and fame and wealth, beyond that, like what is needed, that it's a sandcastle, it's a house of cards. And I have never, even on the toughest days, looked back and been like, even when my daughter is, even if when she's 30, she goes through this period where she doesn't want to talk to me, I will never feel that way about my daughter, that like, oh, what do I have to show for it? What a waste of time. Or so it kind of like really early, the suffering has forced me to really tangibly see, well, there are constant forks in the road of how you use your time. And in the moment, a lot of times it feels like what I really need to do is just put my head down and work for 2 hours. But instead, I'm going to go to gymnastics with my kid. And I always look back 2 weeks later. I'm like, well, thank God I didn't spend those 2 hours working, because that client thing fell through anyways. But the memory I have of seeing her do her first this, like, irreplaceable. It's priceless. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And yeah, I completely concur, especially with the aspect of, again, that grieving when it comes to kind of your time. And yeah, I noticed, like, as I'm getting older, I just don't have the energy for a lot of things. And being an overcoming former people pleaser, and a person that, again, is in love with wanting to do the right things, and but just because something can sound good and even be good, it may not necessarily be for me to do. And so, to your point, I've had to learn to be okay with saying no. I've had to learn to be gracious with myself when it comes to the allocation of my time, and knowing that something can be good but not necessarily be for me to do. And I'm thankful because for me, part of my life's work, my purpose is as a liaison. So part of the reason why I was created was specifically to connect people with one another, or to connect people with things. And so often what that means is that there are different opportunities that are brought my way, but they're not necessarily for me. They're for someone else. And so my responsibility isn't necessarily to see a need or an opportunity and I got to jump on it and do it as I thought in the past. It is to stop and think, okay, who is this for? Who do I need to connect them with? And so this time is really teaching me to be patient, to be more strategic, to again learn how to pause and really think through before I move, rather than just jumping into something. And so yeah, but I completely agree as far as with the way you're allocating your time. You'll never I'll say this, I have never gone wrong investing time in my family. Never, ever. Like I after the fact, like it was never, dang, I could have done. No, I've never, even now, like with my children and with where they are in life, like them, like knowing in my heart and them confirming that me being there made a difference in how they see themselves and how they are, and the appreciation that they have for life. And so, and knowing that again, when it comes to, for me, this, looking at my life now, like, okay, professionally, what do I need to be doing? Like, where do I need to be, looking for different revenue streams and things of that nature. But it's, the money's going to be there, the opportunities are going to be there. But, I'll never forget, I was doing a workshop in a school, and one of the students said in the poem they wrote, and they said, I will only be the age that I am once. And when I tell you, that thing just resonated with me, and I couldn't stop repeating it to other people, because the bottom line is your daughter will never be 3 again. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to get these opportunities back. There are certain things that if you miss it, you miss it. And so, yeah, not wanting to miss it, but really understanding, again, some of the personal stuff, that stuff is going to be there. I'm planning on being productive and fruitful and generating revenue until I get put in the ground, to be honest. Like that's my goal. Not that I'm money driven, but the goal is to be productive. But those moments, like with my children, with my girls, like I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to miss it.
One of the things that I have found to be there for Jayama is I have had to place a greater emphasis on taking care of myself. Before, if I'm an artist, I love the 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. I love that time. I don't know about you, but that's, everybody's in bed. I used to stay up late. I would exercise, but I've had to change how I've exercised. Like I've had to start stretching more, place a greater emphasis on stretching. I've had to start to get to bed by like 10:30, which is torture to me. I've really had to place an emphasis on working through my trauma and limiting beliefs. I've had to emphasize spending alone time, and it affects a lot of things. It affects friendships. Sometimes I've had plans with a friend on Sunday, and I've had to say it's been a week where my daughter's needed a lot of my energy, and unfortunately I have to take that 4 hours I have to rest. I found it's a lot of trade-offs. It's like I want to stay up till 3 so I can write this song, but then when my daughter gets up at 7, she will feel the consequences. So it's like a shifting of not just how I treat others, but how I treat myself. And that's kind of been a surprising, unanticipated consequence. And I saying it out loud too, I think that's one of the ways already that the relationship is a two-way street. It's not just me pouring into her, but without her maybe even realizing it, she's pouring into me, because all of these practices, what I'm really saying is I've had to focus on trying to be as healthy as I can. And I think that things that circumstances force you to do become healthier is usually all upside. But it's the like, but I have a preference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that grace that you have to learn how to extend to yourself is it can be a really challenging thing, but within the dynamic of a parent, it's so important that we model those things, that we model the behavior and the expectations that we have for our children. And the benefit is that for us, it benefits us, but it also, again, it also provides an example for our children as well. Because children, you'll learn, they don't model what you say, they model what they see. So you'll notice that they're going to pick up certain things that you do more than what you tell them. So a lot of it is intrinsic, things that we pass on, but then a lot of those things again are more informal, by them seeing the way that we conduct ourselves. So absolutely, yeah. Same thing on this end, where for the first time 3 weeks ago, I joined the gym. And I mean, in my whole life, never joined the gym. Started a few years ago, got into a men's empowerment group, something that I needed to do for me, and started with a morning routine and just learning learning what self-care, effective self-care for me, what does that look like? So it's been a really strong time of enlightenment for me. But even with that, learning how to balance, again, giving myself grace. Because yes, I need to get up at 5 a.m. I need to pray. I need to read. I need to exercise. I need to plot my day. And the alarm clock goes off at 5 o'clock or 5:30, and I'm exhausted. And to your point, Tom, it's like, I'm gonna lay here, not because I'm lazy, but because like I really need this right now. And it took me a while to learn how to give myself grace and not go into my day agonizing about what I didn't do, but learning to embrace the choice that, hey, you made a choice. You chose to rest, be okay with that, and then move on with your day. Don't allow that to become this anchor for your whole day because your routine was thrown off, and trusting that you're giving yourself what you need.
Yeah, that has definitely been a lesson. I think a God lesson that I've learned through my daughter is, and honestly through my business going through what it went through, is like, I am just not a good big picture planner. Like I am, but what I have learned is that my planning doesn't mean SHIT. That like yesterday I had a whole plan for the day, and then something happened with my daughter, and that was my whole day. And when I was able to get past but I had a perfectly planned day that was going to check off so many boxes, when I kind of I'm like, you know what? The chaos, the unpredictability ended up being a day that yesterday I'm going to remember for a long time. And had I been able to do my routines and do this at this time, and then this at this time, and then this at this time, and then I'll get her from school. Like, had that happen, would have been just another day. And that's kind of been like on a spiritual level, is being like, I can make plans and I will strategize, but ultimately, so it doesn't turn into this like angst, I have to then find this spiritual place of like, all right, this is my plan. And I recognize that I don't have the big picture, how everything perfectly and is intricately connected on a spiritual level. I don't know that. So I have to be willing to let my plans go to waste. And that is definitely something a toddler will do God's work in. I don't think you come to peace with.
Yes. Yes. Children will definitely do God's work in you. Absolutely.
It's like she always knows when I have people are always like, can you meet at this time? I'm like, I can, but my daughter always knows when I have an early morning meeting. She just senses it. And, just little by little, we'll just eat away at the morning. And next thing you know, you're texting someone, I'm going to be 45 minutes late. So it's.
I don't know if you remember Cotton here in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
So Cotton has a phrase that I think is appropriate here, where that's throwing the circle in the square.
Exactly.
That's the circle in the square.
Okay, well, we are arriving at the 30-minute mark here. So what we'll do is we'll shamelessly self-promote, and then we'll do our closing ritual of sharing with people an invitation. And then we'll start up again for episode 3 after that. So, Wally, where can the good folks out there brag on yourself, share about yourself? Where can they be? How can people become a part of your world?
Absolutely. So again, we were talking about family and fatherhood. And so one of the things that I'm proud of is I actually do life coaching. And so you can visit me at www.chosenlifespecialist.com. And so very proud of the website that my wife and I, the business that we're building as far as we're partnering with individuals and couples. So you can visit me there. On social media, you can visit us at Chosen Life Specialists on Instagram, and also Chosen Life Specialists on Facebook also.
Perfect. And if they want to connect with you as an individual, why don't you give out your website as well?
Sure, absolutely. You can find me at WallyBJennings.com. You can also find me at Wally B Jennings on Instagram and Walter Wally B Jennings on Facebook.
Boom. There we go. Myself, best way to connect with us is to check out our Direct Connect Method membership program. And what we really do is once a month we get together and we go through a journaling workshop that sets the stage. Then you get a private journal, and you get a private podcast that I create for you that you then work on for the next 30 days. Boom, we get together again. We repeat the process. So if you want to come to one of our pop-up workshops, see what that looks like, tomearl.me/DCM invite. All right. What is your invitation to the folks who are listening? What would you invite them to become, to reflect upon, to read, anything you'd like? What's your invitation?
Yeah, so I would invite all of you listening to give yourself grace to wherever you are in life right now, to embrace the season that you are in, to ask yourself, what is this season requiring of you? And are you willing to yield it? Are you willing to yield to this season what it is requiring of you? Not allowing yourself to be enslaved to previous where you thought you would be, what you think you should be doing, but to really be focused on where you are in this season of life and leaning into everything that it is requiring and asking of you.
I love that. And I'm going to write down a question we're going to start the next podcast with, that your invitation brought up for me. So join us next week, y'all, to hear that. My invitation, I'm going to co-create it with you, Wally. I loved what you said. Mine is, I think one of the first places to do that, like an experiential way, is to be mindful when you're adding this extra narrative into what you're feeling of, I shouldn't be feeling this, or this shouldn't be happening. Different than calling out injustice or someone disrespecting you. To call out injustice or someone disrespecting you, you have to acknowledge that it exists, right? That it is. And for myself, I spent a lot of time resisting what is, even though it already is. So, for example, my depression, I spent a lot of time being like, I shouldn't feel this way, or I should be happy, or I should be over this by now, and instead, right, just acknowledging doesn't mean I am okay with something, but acknowledging what is, and removing this kind of like self-judgment or resistance to it. And I have found when you do that, it gives you more of a platform within yourself to then take action, to then call something out, to then come up with a creative solution, an innovative solution. So just catch yourself. A lot of times it's like you're waiting in line. It's like, oh my gosh, will this go any faster? Is not going to go any faster. So it's okay to be frustrated, but don't add on this layer of like, this shouldn't be the way it is. It is what it is. So I think that's an experiential way to practice all of what we've talked about. Wally, another episode for the books. Thank you, my friend. All right, y'all. We'll see you next week. As always, wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.